I was challenged last week by somebody that has been watching the videos of the sermons, and they said, well, last Sunday was okay, but it wasn't as good as the one before that. I didn't know there was a contest. But it made me think, why would that have been? And I switched last Sunday from going through the book of Acts, that series, and I'm absolutely loving doing that one. But I switched from that to Christmas messages, Advent messages. I just couldn't figure, there was a lot of parallels between the stories in Acts with Paul and Barnabas off on their missionary trips and Christmas. I'm sure that if I'd have worked hard enough, I could have. But as I went back and started thinking, what does Christmas really mean? And we talked about the Advent candles, and each candle means something else. It stands for joy, peace, hope, love, all of those things. And it's like, so today we're going to talk about one of those things. But I am struggling a little bit, I guess, if that's the right word, in my life as I listen to news, as I read the newspaper, as I consider what's going on, not only around the world, but in our state and in our communities. And it's easy to become really downtrodden, to get very depressed at that time. And so today we're going to talk about Hebrews, or read our basis for our scriptures, Hebrews, a few extra verses from what's there. But that's kind of where I want us to go this morning is, how is your soul? Anybody gone through a storm in life this last year? There isn't anyone here who didn't. They looked a lot different. No two of us went through the same storm. Every one of us had some difficult times, and yet you're here. How did that happen? Why are you here, having gone through the horrible things that you did, the raging of life itself? How did we get through that? When I was in Billings, and I talked about that a little earlier today, but I was a volunteer chaplain for the Billings Police Department. And there was about 30 of us around, and so we would have a day to be on call. We would be the chaplain on duty that day, and we got to drive a cop car. They had a cop car that had the big emblem on the door, and we didn't have any lights, and we didn't have a siren. I think there's a reason for that. But it's amazing when you pull up to a stop sign and somebody roars up and they see that car, they all of a sudden turn into good drivers. But one of the things that we did many things, and one of the I appreciated a lot is we were just friends to the policemen. We rode with them. Every month we would ride a tour or a shift with one of the cops that was there. And then we were often called to go and give death notifications to people. And that was not a fun thing at all, but we were there to provide spiritual support for people. And then one of the other things was crisis intervention. And we were trained on particularly those that were considering suicide. How do you do that? And they said there are 3 keys to this that we needed to be aware of. First of all, the person who is considering suicide is hapless. It's just a lot of bad things are happening to them. Kind of beyond their control. It's just the stuff of life is happening. So they feel hapless. I'm unlucky. Things are just going downhill. second thing is they feel helpless. Well, I didn't cause it, it's there, it's somebody else's fault. I know I might have made a mistake, but I just feel helpless, that I'm not ever going to get out of this. And those two things in themselves are pretty critical. But the thing that was hammered into us back then is that with those two things, don't give up. But when this third one, when people feel that it is hopeless and things are never going to change, that's when it gets ugly. And so that's what I'm concerned about with us as Christians and with us as the church. Are we turning and are we becoming hopeless during this Christmas season? A lot of stuff is going on in the world, and I want us to take a look at those and wonder. This is my prayer, that you will experience hope this Christmas. If you look at that ornament, that is really a globe. And does our world need hope right now? Absolutely, we do. And that's our prayer, and that's my wish for you today. But what is hope? We're going to talk about that this morning. Hebrews chapter 6, and I'm going to do a few extra verses besides what was on that last slide. Verses 7 to 20. Chapter 6, 7 to 20. Watch for the word hope. It's in there. Land that drinks in the rain, often falling on it, and that produces a crop useful to those for whom it is farmed, receives the blessing from God. But land that produces thorns and thistles is worthless and is in danger of being cursed. In the end, it will be burned. Even though we speak like this, dear friends, we are confident of better things in your case, things that accompany salvation. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. I just want to stop right there and just share kudos to you. You are a breath of fresh air in my life. As a church that actually cares about other people. God will not forget your work and the love that you've shown to each other. Keep it up. That's just a promise that we have. Verse 11. We want each of you to show this same diligence to the very end in order to make your hope sure. We do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what has been promised. When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And so after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. Men swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope offered to us may be greatly encouraged. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where Jesus, who went before us, has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. I love the book of Hebrews. It's a more difficult book than any of the books in the Bible. It is the New Testament book that is the bridge from the Old Testament. More quotations more sightings from the Old Testament are listed in Hebrews than any other book of the New Testament. Even the name Hebrews, it was written to Jews to show them that Jesus the Messiah is the fulfillment from the Old Testament. And so many of the things that you read there are very Jewish in nature. And part of what was talked about was crops and land. It says land that receives the rain, receives the nutrition, what is necessary from God, and produces a good crop, is a blessing to the person that owns it. And it's like the writer of Hebrews is making a point that God has blessed us. What are we doing with it? And he says, now, if we're using the blessing that we're getting from God to bless other people and to help, God's pleased with that. But many of us are more like this. We look like thistles. It says, but land that has thistles in it gets the same rain that the other one did, but it's thistles and thorns, and that is going to be destroyed. That does not please the owner, it doesn't please God. And so he's giving them the idea of examine your life, see how you're doing. It's really a crop check. Rain, I believe, is a parallel to the grace of God. This morning, Christy made a comment when I was giving her grief that she was good. She says, no, I'm saved by grace. There's a lot to that. One of the things I love Dave Ramsey in his show on the radio, how are you doing? Better than I deserve. And I use that answer a lot as well. It's amazing how many people want to argue with me. Oh, no, you deserve. No. If I got what I deserved, I'd be toast. And so would you. But we receive the grace of God. And I believe that when it says the rain that falls on the crop, that's symbolic of the grace of God. The good crop is our service or our ministry to other people. I stopped, I think it was at verse 10, and shared with you about that, is that God's not going to forget how you help other people. That's being good stewards. That's the using that grace of God, that gift, to bless other people. So the good crop is service and ministry to others. And the thistles and thorns is God's judgment when we keep all of that rain to ourselves, all that grace to me. It's given to us to share. And if I sit on it and don't share it, God's judgment is going to fall. The writer says, why do we always say the writer of Hebrews? I might have to have you edit this out. But there's been an argument for years and years about who wrote the book of Hebrews. If you really want an interesting study, just dig that up sometime. There are some people that believe a woman wrote it because it doesn't say who wrote it, and who would have believed if it had been a woman? So she had more credibility if she didn't kept herself anonymous. There's other people that say, well, it was, there's other Christian leaders from the early church. There's some that believe that Paul wrote it. And so that you don't get in an argument, pastors always say, well, the writer of the book of Hebrews said. So that's just what I said. The writer of the book of Hebrews said he had confidence in these people. He says, first of all, God is fair. That's a good thing, that's a scary thing, because God is fair. But if we are legitimately sharing the love, the grace that God has given us, God remembers that. He does, those people really did share my love with other people. They cared for each other within the church. God remembers when we are obedient to His leading through our good work. Now, are we saved through good works? Absolutely not. But God remembers them. And what an encouragement that is. Paul, in another book, which he did write because he put his name on it, said, don't become weary in well-doing. Don't get tired of doing good things. And so good work should be part of who we are. And he's confident that they've been doing that. God's not going to forget it. And I'm confident that God remembers your love for Him. Why do we do what we do? It ought not to do the good things that we do. It ought not to be so that other people like us more. It's because we love God. God loves the world so much that He gave. And if we love, we give. And so the love for God is not going to be forgotten. And the helping others, God won't forget that either. I'm confident that all those things, keep it up. And the writer is telling them that. But he says, this is what we want. We want diligence to the end. Um, there's a lot of examples to that, I think, but I love going to track meets. Track was probably my favorite sport in school, but you ever go to a track meet when there is a 2-mile race and the kid that's in last gets lapped 3 times by the first runner? The person that laps them 3 times comes in and everybody claps, yay! But when that one that was lapped 3 times comes in, there's a roar. People will stand up and clap. You know, you hung in there, you didn't give up, you stuck with it to the very end. That's what he's saying. I want you to stick with it. You may not feel like you're winning the race, but be diligent until you get to the end. And it says, make your hope sure. Unfortunately, the word hope has lost a lot of meaning and meat in the English language. Well, you're going to have candy this afternoon? Well, I hope so. You know, that's kind of the hope that it's maybe a wish of some kind, but a hope is more than that. A hope is a confidence. It isn't just a guess or a wish. It's a confidence that this is going to happen. He says, don't be lazy. What does that have to do with diligence and sure hope? Well, God's going to take care of me, so I don't really need to take care of myself. I'm not going to worry about it. God does not approve or want us to be lazy. He wants us to work, not to earn our salvation, but to prove that we are His, to help other people. And he says, how am I going to do that? He says, imitate faithful people. I'm not going to mention anyone this morning. I don't need to. Everyone in this room knows someone who is a faithful person that follows the Lord Jesus Christ. We need to imitate them. I need to imitate somebody who is a faithful person. I need a hands-on example. And he said, imitate faithful people and be patient. Don't expect it to happen overnight. This is a long haul. This is a marathon, not a sprint that we're running. But be patient. God has promised us some things. First of all, He promises His blessing. He goes back to Abraham, but that same blessing for Abraham applies to us. God promised His blessing, and there is no one greater than God. And if He promises, He doesn't need to say, yep, according to so-and-so, I'm going to bless you. God's the best. He's the ultimate. And if there is no one greater than God, and His purpose never changes. God's purpose is to bless the world and bring them back into relationship with Him. That is His purpose, and His purpose never changes. So what do? It says we fled. What did we flee from? Judgment, the old lifestyle. Many of us are good runners. We just ran away. Sometimes we even, did things we shouldn't have. But it says we take hold of the hope that's offered to us. I'm going to take hold of that confidence of what's coming down. Even in spite of the fact of what I see in the news, in spite of what I feel like in my heart, in spite of what others are sharing with me, I'm going to take hold of that hope that God gives us. And because of that, I'm going to be encouraged. It doesn't end here. There's something much better coming. Hope. How do you describe it? Better things are coming. Written on a rock. That's what hope is. It's tough right now. There's a lot of depressing stuff going on. But you know what? Better things are coming. Jesus is coming back. I've read the end of the book. I know who wins. I can have absolute confidence and hope in who Jesus is. But That's what hope really means. What is our hope? Our hope, it says in this portion of Scripture, is an anchor for the soul. I began my thoughts this morning with a question. How many of you have been in a storm of life, and the storms have been raging this year? You can get through it with God, and the anchor for our soul is this hope that He gives me. It is firm. An anchor that's floating around doesn't do any good. So we have the absolute confidence that this God that we believe in is solid. He's not going to change. His promises aren't going to switch. He still expects the same thing, and He's going to remember what we do. But that anchor is firm, and it is secure. There is nothing that's going to move that anchor. I am solid in Jesus. Now, does that get rid of the storm? No. But it's not going to let me blow from one place to the other. I'm anchored, I'm solid, I'm secure. And then it says our hope, and read this. I looked at that when I was preparing. It says our hope enters the inner sanctuary. That's where mankind met with God. That's the Holy of Holies in the Old Testament. And it says that our hope is right there, in that place, so that I can have absolute communion with God, unrestricted. And then it says, Jesus is already there. That's when Jesus died on the cross. It says that the veil, the curtain that was keeping that Holy of Holies from everybody else was ripped from the top to the bottom. And He said, come on in. And so Jesus is already in there. And that hope that He is there should give us absolute confidence and get us out of any funk that any of us are feeling because of the way the world is going on right now. And He is our high priest forever. There used to be a rotation. And the high priest was the one that went in and talked to God once a year. God, forgive me of my sins. Forgive my people of their sins. Help us to be your people. We don't have to do that once a year anymore. I have a high priest forever in Jesus Christ. And so do you. We can go to Him immediately, any day, 24/7. And He's in that inner sanctuary. He's in that communion with God. And He is going to take our requests directly to Him. Jesus is my anchor. You know, we look at the storms of life. How are we going to make it through? Jesus. He's my anchor. We need to remember there is nothing stronger, more firm, no sure than to have that hope in Jesus Christ. He is our anchor. My wish for you this Christmas is that you'll find true hope. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your goodness. I thank you for the hope that you give us. As Paul wrote in another portion of Scripture, if it's just this world, in this world that we have hope, we are of all people most miserable and most to be pitied. But God, I thank you that our hope isn't just for this world, but for the one to come. I thank you that in the midst of all of the pain, the anguish, the death, the destruction, and all of the evil in our world, that we don't need to bury our heads in the sand or become depressed, but to know that things are going to change because you are our anchor, you are our hope. Thank you for seeing us through the storms that each of us have experienced.